afternoon, everyone. My name is Léonie Watson. I work for a company called the Paciolo Group, otherwise known as TPG. We're an accessibility agency based in the United States, but with engineers all over the world that work with organizations to help them make their products of various digital sorts more accessible. I've borrowed a secret co-presenter today, Charles and Kathy Neville, who, contrary to his name badge, doesn't work for TPG, actually works for Yandex.
Yeah, I work for Yandex. Yeah. Kirill, wherever he is, knows who they are. It's a big company in Russia.
And today we're going to talk about SVG accessibility, which is a story of optimism, hope, a certain degree of practicality, and quite a bit of tragedy. So we're going to just tell you some about the realities of SVG and accessibility in the web today, and perhaps a little bit into the future.
So, yeah, stuff. The background, 15 years ago, I and some colleagues wrote a thing about accessibility stuff in SVG, most of which was pious hope about things that you could probably make work. And you go and read it because it's still there, and it's hopefully being outdated bit by bit. But there was one SVG plugin that worked in browsers. There were weird things that did SVG now, as most people know. You can put SVG in browsers. Oh, can't see one. So the rough story is, if you want things to work with accessibility, it means you want them to work in browsers. If you want them to work in browsers, then generally you should aim to inline your SVG into HTML directly. And that's mildly annoying because there are a couple of things that don't work then. But that's what you get. What works? It turns out there is a bunch of stuff that really does work. So should you care about this? Is it all just random theory? No. Almost nothing works perfectly. A lot of stuff works very substantially, clearly well enough to bother doing it because you, as the theme of storytelling, because you're telling a story to someone and you want to make sure that they can get it. It will work enough for people who need it most of the time. And the first, most obvious thing about SVG and accessibility is that this is graphics. So, not amazing, complicated problems. It's like, be clear, produce graphics. Does anyone have a sense of what that represents? It's a bunch of airplanes. I have looked at it for a year and a half, and I have no idea what it's meant to mean. I just don't get it. And be comprehensible. When you provide graphics. So you have your bar chart, and it's pretty easy to pick sort of what this line here is actually representing, right? All you've got to do is figure out which group it's in, which block, and what color, and how it works. So grouping stuff, using space. All of this is like graphics, graphic communication 101. Apply, because duh. Contrast. So this graph is great. When Philip showed his graph this morning, the story of climate change, if you look at this nice fancy monitor here, you can see that the story is kind of vague, but there's a big fat trend line. And if you look at it on here, you can't see the trend line at all, because there's not enough contrast in the system. So the two pictures he was presenting, which looked quite different, were the same thing, just because contrast is different for different people. If you happen to be the sort of user who really does rely on high contrast, and you do things like increase your contrast, then things like colors disappear, which is not necessarily surprising. Is anyone here colorblind? No? So that makes us statistically anomalous. Well, has some color blindness. Right, 1, 2, yeah. That's probably still slightly lower than average. It takes a very small number of people before you find who actually can't see as many colours as you thought they could, and so you need to make that work properly. People use grayscale and so on, so your images drop out. SVG is currently scalable, right, to allow for people to scale it. There's a few things that you can do to try and stop people scaling. There is another trick that people do in their browsers, which is they set a minimum font size. Old people like me, we should wear glasses but lose them all the time, still can't see little text, so I just set everything up to a minimum. If you look at these images, because they've got text in there, the minimum sizes apply. Actually, you zoom out the image and you get something more useful that you can read, and then you can zoom it up and make it bigger. But allowing people to zoom and pan and explore the images would seem like a no-brainer. It didn't work in browsers, didn't work in all browsers until relatively recently. And there's still lots of ways of stopping it, and there are lots of people who do stop users from zooming things. Like, it won't look right. More to the point, if you go back to this image and you zoom it up so that you only see the left-hand side, you lose some very critical information. If you have a legend, a key, if you have bits of text, as the thing zooms, make sure the critical information is still close to where the user is so they can get it. Don't make people span backwards and forwards across things, trying to remember where they were in the image and what they need to interpret that image. Animation interaction. So I have here a beautiful SVG demonstration, standard science thing. And all I do is press this button and show you how the temperature changes as you heat up ice blocks. Luckily, I've actually got labels and descriptions for everything. So the animations, an SVG animation is really nice because you can do things like chain animations together, make one animation trigger another. Sadly, if you try and use SVG animation to kick the sort of title and description stuff, it doesn't work. It should. There's no obvious reason why it wouldn't, except it doesn't in browsers. There's bugs in everything. So you actually do need to use JavaScript in order to provide text content and alternative content that's non-visual, which Léonie will talk about more in a minute. And a nice trick is just using CSS. This particular diagram, which is a fascinating flowchart of process, uses CSS so that you can, as you move around, you can focus on the bits relevant to what you're looking at. It's a neat trick because there's one line of code, three lines of CSS to make lots of stuff focusable and bring your attention to where it needs to be. So keyboards. Once upon a time, accessibility people thought that the keyboard was everything. All accessibility users revolve around the keyboard. This is not true. But a bunch of them still do. And keyboard support is tricky. There are some nice things that keyboards enable. If you have links, you can navigate through links. This eloquent, obvious image, does anyone recognize this? Long Island? It's an island. It is an island.
Cuba.
1,000,000 points. But if you actually, how do you do things like mapping? How do you do things like spatial information? Letting people follow paths around is one thing, and links let you do that. I have here a couple of demos. On the right is a complicated graph that could be navigable. Right? In theory, you're navigating a dozen objects and a dozen objects and their connection to each other. And it's quite dense presentation information. But if you could tab around this, the one on your right, the way you can tab around this, where I can actually move from one piece to another, and I broke it, and follow a link and explore around. Then you can get into the graph in a way to find out what the pieces mean, what each piece is telling you, and explore it bit by bit. And that's quite helpful. If I look at this chord graph and I try and figure out what are the proportions between one side of the graph and the severe stuff, how much of a proportion is that? I can get a rough sense. You can put real data in there. All the information was generated automatically. You can put actual numbers in so that people can explore that and get more stuff out. Did you want to talk about tabulate?
Sure.
I'll give Leonie the rest of them. There you go. Yep. Yep.
So sometimes you want to change the things in an SVG that are focusable. Sometimes you want to make things that aren't natively focusable, and sometimes you want to correct some bugs, like the one IE has, where it has a tendency to make all sorts of things in SVG focusable where they don't really want to be. If you're a keyboard user, there's an expense or a cost to what you have to do to navigate through something. Charles mentioned that things that are focusable, you have to hit them in sequence, which is why linking is useful, because it lets you choose a particular pathway through, rather than having to just follow the natural keyboard sequence of something. There's an attribute that started off life in HTML3, I think. Well, thank you. Was evolved in HTML5 with a little help from ARIA, and is now being introduced into SVG2. And it's the tab index attribute. And it lets you control whether something is focusable or not, and if absolutely necessary, the order in the tab sequence that that thing falls into. So the process flowchart that we were looking at before uses tab index to create a focusable point within the tree, because that point has two possible routes out of it, a yes and a no. Show them that one. And so we want to make the sort of parent focusable in order to let people know that they can then choose to go yes or no out from that direction. As I say, to do that, you can use tab index with a value of 0. What that does will put the thing in question into the tab sequence at the point where the code sits in the source code, where the element sits in the source code. And as a rule, if you want to make something focusable, that's pretty much the most natural way to do it. If you wanted to correct the IE bug, where it makes everything focusable whether you want it to or not, you can give the tab index attribute a -1 value, and that will remove the thing completely from the keyboard sequence. You need to be a little bit careful about doing that, because if you use tab index -1, it basically means that someone who relies on a keyboard, can't use a mouse, will never be able to focus on or interact with that thing, so use it wisely. The good thing about SVG, and in particular a lot of the features coming in SVG2, is that there are some good semantics. For those of you not familiar with the term, what we mean by semantics is just the meaning of code or content that's displayed on a page. So if you use HTML, for example, the browser and assistive technologies like screen readers that translate on-screen content into synthetic speech will identify different elements, what a paragraph or a heading is. A lot of those features are coming with SVG2, and a lot of that automatic identification will happen. Something that's been there for a lot longer in SVG is the ability to use the text element. And browsers actually identify the content of the text element as text, as though it were just plain text written in any other fashion. The nice thing from an accessibility point of view about that, apart from the fact that it's stylable, so you can do all sorts of good things with the contrast and the font face and the text size to make it legible and comfortable to read. The other good thing is that assistive technologies like screen readers can just take the text content and speak it out loud to people like myself who can't actually see the text content on screen. So if you're going to provide visual labels for things in diagrams or data visualizations or anywhere else in SVG, The best way to do it is to use the text element and actually use good old-fashioned plain text in the page. One thing that's definitely not good to do, and SVG is actually in itself a good solution for, it's a really bad idea from an accessibility point of view to put text in a raster image, because that text can't be resized, and if you do use Zoom on whatever device you're using, the text often pixelates and becomes really difficult to read. SVG's native scalability and using the text element are both ways you can avoid those kind of complications with SVG content. Some other things that have good semantic accessibility in SVG are the title and desk elements. In accessibility, we have something known as the accessible name for an object and the accessible description. The accessible name is a label that something is given, in this case through SVG content, and it's the information that something like my screen reader uses to give me some clue about what the object in question is. So if you give some SVG a title using the title element, a screen reader will pick that up and identify that particular SVG object on the page. You can also use the desk element to provide a little bit more descriptive information about that particular SVG, and that becomes the object accessible description. So the example we've got on screen at the moment, I think, is a picture of a trench coat guy, and the title for that is something just like trench coat man, and then there's a more detailed description that describes this man in a trench coat with his back turned, standing in a pool of shadow. And of course, if you can't see that content, that's really invaluable information. The interesting thing about using the title element in particular is that you can, of course, have multiple elements within an SVG. The bad news from an accessibility point of view is that pretty much only the first title element is picked up by assistive technologies and announced to people who can't see the image. The worst news is that more often than not, unfortunately, the desk element in its own right is completely ignored by assistive technologies as well, but all is not lost. We can use a little bit of ARIA to hook these pieces of information together in a way that is recognized by most assistive technologies. You can use the ARIA-label by attribute to hook the title element to the thing it's the label for, and ARIA described by attribute to hook the desk element to the thing it's describing. And actually, when you do that, you'll find that most screen readers in most browsers will pick up both of those pieces of information. The ARIA labeled by attribute and ARIA described by attribute can take multiple ID references as their values. So it is actually possible to hook up multiple titles or indeed multiple descriptions. So you can enable exploration in different images and let people drill down. So in the trench coat image, we've got titles hidden there that describe different component parts of the image. So the band on the hat or the pool of shadow at the person's feet and other bits of information as a composite create the whole image. You can use the use element, of course, in SVG to create a single definition of something that then can be duplicated elsewhere in your content. The accessibility gets even more murky, unfortunately, with this. An ideal use case would be to, in your definition, to use a general title for the thing in question, and then every time you use the use element, have a local title, perhaps add in a bit more specific information to the label. Unfortunately, if you just leave the SVG to its own devices, this really doesn't work terribly well in almost any browser or any particular screen reader. But you can use the ARIA labeled by and ARIA described by attributes to hook some of the information together. Chrome is the outstanding winner in that it will always pick up the title from the definition, and it will always pick up the title from the use instance as well. Other browsers pick up some or all or none of the information, depending on what day of the week it is and whether there's a prevailing wind or not. But this is all improving. I've been looking at this for a couple of years now, and slowly but surely the browsers are kind of improving on what they're capable of supporting. I mentioned ARIA a couple of times. It's a technology called Accessible Rich Internet Applications. It was originally developed as a way to add semantic information to web applications. They were trying to emulate a lot of the interface components typically found in software, so things like tab panels and sliders and progress bars and other bits and pieces. It's a very screen reader specific technology at the moment. It has a little bit of support from the latest Dragon naturally speaking speech recognition tool, but other than that, it's really only screen readers used by blind people that make use of ARIA. And you can do all sorts of things with ARIA to make better information available to screen readers, usually where that information is pretty obvious visually. So you can add roles to things using the role attribute. So for your SVG itself, if it's an atomic piece of content, you can just give it a role of image, IMG, and that will tell the screen reader to inform the user that this thing is an image, pretty much duplicating the way it would announce an image if it were pulled in using the image tag in HTML. You can do things like add semantics for lists. There are roles to say, treat this thing as though it were a list or a list item. You can do the same for tables, so if you've got something that looks like a table in your SVG content, you can use ARIA to add the semantic information in for screen readers. Similarly,
More to the point, if you've got something that doesn't look like a table, but is, you can add the information as a table.
right, so a good use case for that is if you've got a bar chart. Bar charts actually translate very well into tabular information, especially if you're a screen reader user. That's quite an understandable format to present information that visually may not immediately, obviously, look like a table. There's also another ARIA attribute, ARIA-live, and this creates something called a live region on the page. So if you are updating or changing information on the page, you can update a text message inside the live region, and that will cause a screen reader to automatically announce the new message as it's posted into the live region, no matter what the person with the screen reader is actually focused on the page at the same time. So it's quite a useful notification technique that you can use. I think there's a link there to a video that introduces some more of the ARIA concepts using HTML, but they're all pretty much applicable to SVG. I say applicable to SVG, technically, only with SVG 2, but providing you don't wave anything near a conformance code checker, nobody really cares. A lot of this stuff will work in the browser to a point. There's a new piece of work underway from the ARIA working group in collaboration with the SVG working group at the W3C called the graphics module. And this is an early attempt to start looking at some roles and semantics around the accessibility of data visualization. It's out for review at the moment, so those of you who are interested in data visualization, your feedback would really be appreciated. This module aims to introduce 3 new roles, so 3 new things that you'll be able to use to identify the purpose of SVG content. One is the graphics document role, and the idea behind this is that you can use it for something that exists within its own context. So usually an SVG that is pretty much the primary document, if not the entire document itself. It may have a lot of composite parts inside it, but it has to exist as a whole, and quite often you'll set up a navigation that's just purely contextually based to the graphics document, so an entirely different navigation pattern for that content might be the case. You've got a graphics object, and that's something that again may have different bits and pieces within it that you might want to make available in an accessible sense. But the idea about a graphics object is that it can be used anywhere, or it can be moved around and used in any context without losing its meaning. The last one is a graphic symbol. This is intended for an atomic object where the description of what the symbol looks like is not as important as knowing what the symbol represents. So, for example, the People Drive has a symbol that's not a floppy disk of all sorts of peculiar things. It's actually not important that that symbol is a floppy disk drive. What's important is that it represents the Google Drive service. So the graphic symbol is intended for use in that kind of purpose. So as I say, for anyone into data visualization or SVG accessibility feedback, very much welcome on that.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Well, so there's some picture credits. We'll put the slides up and all the pictures and stuff are in there. You can explore the SVG, some of which is more and some of which is less accessible. So feel free to write and say, hey, your example is only kind of half finished. We know. Even better would be pull requests. There's a repo full of examples that we play around with to try and figure out how to do hard things. And other people looking at how to do it would be really valuable. A, because it means you learn, and B, because we get stuff wrong from time to time, or we don't get things finished. This is a quick sort of guide to some things that you would like to have working, but they kind of work. Know where things are going to go wrong. And with that, thanks.
Thank you.